Hey there everybody, Blind Rob here, subbing in for Corvus yet again, here on Starting Out Solitary. This is week 260, and we're talking about necromancy, of all things. Oh, good gods, this is going to be an interesting topic, or it should have been, though I have a feeling that this video is probably going to end up disappointing a lot of people, in which case I do apologize. Speaking of apologies, I also apologize that this video is a day or so late again. I was supposed to have this video up on Wednesday, but, things are still a little weird going on, and honestly, in general, I only have about 1 or 2 days a week that I can make videos in the first place, and a lot of the times, no matter how hard I try, I just cannot schedule them the way I'd like. So, as is this recording, it is either really late Wednesday night or really early Thursday morning when I record this video. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's Thursday morning. Anyway, with all that said, let's dive right into this topic, shall we? Necromancy. I know what some of you watching this video are probably thinking. You're probably thinking something similar to what I'm thinking, which is, the mainstream media, Hollywood, high fantasy, novels, what have you, has painted a very over-the-top, elegant, and even to some extent cliched picture regarding what is popularly conceived as necromancy. Raising the dead, having hordes of zombies at your beck and call. But, necromancy, as far as this practice by people who actually practice it, real life, real world necromancy, it's kind of a complicated thing as far as I'm aware of, because it's one of those things that a lot of people, as far as I'm aware of, practice various things that could fall under the term necromancy, yet they themselves might not consider themselves a necromancer for one reason or another. It's kind of like other terms such as witch, magician, pagan, what have you. Different people will attach personal value or worth to those labels, or they don't, depending on their own personal experiences, their own personal conception, ideas, perspectives of those terms, what those terms mean to them in either positive, neutral, or negative context. Which is something that I don't know about anyone else, but it's something that I try to take into consideration whenever, I'm thinking of something, talking about something, so on and so forth. And I have interacted with, and talked to a bunch of people who practice various things that could be considered necromancy along the way. Some of them do consider themselves necromancers. Some of them don't. Some people will prefer other terms such as ancestor workers, spirit workers, death midwives, or what have you. Death workers, death witches. I've known some people who will call it deathcraft or death witchcraft. And it's interesting because I do know a couple people who are specifically within the spirit worker community. I consider them acquaintances at the most, who considers themselves necromancers because the type of spirit work that they do is dealing specifically with humans and animal dead. The spirits of those who physically reside on this earth, as far as we're aware of, who have dwelt here, physically, who are no longer present physically, and that's the majority of their work, their practice, if not the entirety of their practice, is focused in such a way. I think, in a lot of ways, from an outsider's point of view, talking to the couple people that I know who do prefer the term necromancer, that seems to be the main highlight of why they consider themselves as such, or why they consider their practice as necromancers, because of the fact that the majority over the entirety of their practice is focused in one way or another into death work, death magic. And I can understand that to a certain extent. Well, I won't say to a certain extent. I can kind of understand that, in a huge way. I'm kind of similar in that respect, except with bardic magic. With creativity, inspiration, poetry, lyric magic, so on and so forth. But it's kind of funny because there are a lot of things that could technically fall into necromancy, such as mediumship, ancestor work, what have you. But as far as necromancy of itself, it's very much magic focused on death, the spirits of the dead, those who have departed. And while otherworldly beings, deities, so on and so forth, can be involved into it, for the most part, it's more focusing on what is commonly referred to in a lot of different communities as the noble dead, the honored dead, the mighty dead. The spirits of people who, as far as we're aware of, have evidence that they breathed, that they lived, that they died here on Earth, and that we can seek out and find their remains if we wish. And most of the people who practice necromancy or something that could be considered necromantic in some way, usually at least one of the deities that they work with or they have a relationship with is a deity that deals with death. A lot of the times their main deity or main deities have something to do with death or dying, or they happen to be psychopumps, deities who help the spirits pass from this world to the next, or so on and so forth. Outside what a lot of people typically think in necromancy, as far as like communicating with the dead, seeking knowledge and understanding from the dead, finding getting closure with the dead. Some of the ones that I've talked to who quote unquote are necromancers, who practice necromancy, they will practice, they will incorporate death style magic in other ways in their practice, such as I know someone who was wanting to place a curse on someone, and they were able to obtain graveyard dirt of an ancestor of the person of one of their enemies, and they utilized that in their spell work to cause them harm, to do major damage to them and theirs. Now, I'm not condoning that kind of practice necessarily, because I personally think just going around, nitty witty, especially, disturbing the sacred places of the departed, especially if they're not, connected to you in some ways, can be very disrespectful in a lot of ways. But, to each their own, different people can have different practices, different traditions, different practitioners are going to have their own code of ethics, their own morality when it comes to their practice and how they go about doing it. So, I mean, if nothing else, I can at least respect the one person I know who does do this on occasion. I can respect the fact that they're ruthless in their spell work and that they are willing to do what it takes to accomplish their goals. Some other things I've known. Some people, the couple people who I know who are necromancers, who prefer the term necromancers over something, or necromancy over something else for their practice. They will try to bind souls, bind spirits, human spirits, to their will or to their work. Once again, that's not something that I personally condone, but it's not my practice. Or they will try to bargain with certain, spirits to get revenge, or, once again, to do harm, on someone. It's like, hey, this person's my enemy. I found out that they were your enemy and when you were alive. Why don't you help me extract punishment upon them, retribution upon them, assault them in one way or another. As far as my practice goes, I do not consider myself a necromancer. I've been slowly getting into ancestor work a lot, death work a little bit over the past year, and part of that is due to my progressing and increasing and strengthening relationship with hell, the daughter, the goddess who is the daughter of Loki, who I have recently officially started considering as my full tree, fully trusted, deity. And there are some of my ancestors that I work with, that I communicate with, that I seek knowledge and understanding. Some of them help me with my work, with various portions of my magical practice. I have members in my family who are ancestors who, while they weren't witches, or they would never use the term witch to identify themselves for one reason or another, primarily because of the culture and the traditions that they practice as far as like folk magic goes. I have one great grandmother who will occasionally say, "Hey, Rob, you're not doing this right," or here is a little something that you can do to increase this particular thing that you're doing at this time. I also have a close friend of mine, who was sort of a mystic Christian in life, passed away several years ago, and he has recently popped up occasionally, especially while I've been in group ritual. And it's a little weird. I mean, I welcome him because he is a close friend of mine, even now. So it is nice to see him pop in and say hi and help me out. But I don't know. I think the main reason why I don't consider myself a necromancer, why I don't consider what I'm starting to do or starting to do more of as necromancy, is because it's not the primary focus of my practice. Even when I am doing something that is specifically in the realms of death work, death magic, ancestry work, the fact that it is ancestry work, the fact that it is death-based magic, is sort of a secondary goal or secondary thing in my mind. Yeah, it's there. The fact that, I'm tapping in those spirits, those energies, in that way. But usually, all it is to me is the vehicle of how I carry it out. I'm primarily, a bard and a spirit worker, so I mean, I'm all about relationships with deities, with otherworldly beings, with ancestors, and the ancestors part, and especially human dead. One of the things is, it's really been interesting for me the past year that I really haven't talked a lot about in public, is occasionally I've been tapped on my shoulder, tagged by certain spirits who've been wanting me to record and share their stories, the little brief things that they share with me. So I guess in that way, I consider that like an extension of my bardic work, but it kind of crosses over in death work as well. I still don't consider it necromancy, but that's partly because I don't like the term. And a large part of that is due to the fact that I play Dungeons and Dragons, I read a lot of fantasy novels, fantasy fiction, I write a lot of fan fiction for a lot of fantasy settings. So, and the fact it's been popularized in certain ways makes it one of those terms that I personally want nothing to do with. And I'm not entirely sure if this is the reason why a lot of people that I know who do have a primary focus in death magic, yet do not prefer to use the term necromancy or necromancer to describe themselves, for that matter. I don't know if that's the reason why they don't use that term, or it could be a whole host of things. It could be whatever, and that's perfectly fine. And yeah, that's basically all I got to say on this. It's funny. I came into this video thinking, oh, I don't really have much to say on this. And as usual, things just kind of popped up in my brain, and, I ramble. That's how I am. That is part of my kind of chaotic bardic way, if you will, is to ramble. So I hope you enjoyed this. Anyway, as always, it is a pleasure being able to be on here to sub in as a sub-host when I'm needed and when it is necessary. And until I'm able to converse with you all like this again in the near future, may Breach bless. Take care.